welcome to Monday Morning Detective, the podcast, and I am your host, Gino Scala. This is episode number 32, and today we're going to discuss, once again, the Idaho murder updates. There have been a lot of press reports over the weekend, and hopefully after this point, we'll move on to other stories. I have other interviews lined up, and it should be very exciting down the road here. And we'll allow the Idaho murder case to settle as we'll report news as it breaks, etc. But there have been some interesting developments. There has been a report that it is possible that the suspect, we'll refer to him as BK, actually visited several online sleuth pages. Now, I was a member of two of these pages that the suspect presumably or evidently may have joined and commented on. So let me explain. There is an ongoing page about the Idaho murders called Idaho Murders Discussion Case or something along those lines. I was on it for about a week. It got overwhelming for me, and it became a real time suck for someone who has, other work to be doing. So I had to refrain. There was a period of time that I spent 36 hours straight on that page. I posted my theory, got over 2,000 comments, and a lot of questions, and I stayed up answering all the questions. So, once I realized that this was out of hand, I had to leave the page for my own self, not because of anything on the page. They are a very good group. Some people are a little bit on the loony side, and that's true with any of these kind of pages. But for the most part, except over the Christmas holidays, for the most part, the monitors were on it as far as any potential attacks that people had and things of that nature. Because you're going to get your series of trolls, whatever page you go on. That being said, the other page, or it's actually a YouTube channel run by Jessica De La Davies, I believe, and I could be pronouncing that incorrectly. And it's called The Reporter Room, and she's very good. And one comment about the page, the Facebook page, the research there, it was incredible. They meaning the monitors and the owner of the page, would not let a comment slide as being factual if it wasn't factual. So, I mean, there's a thing to have a theory and speculate, and it's another thing to claim, well, this is what happened, and there's no evidence to that. And in these kind of groups with thousands and thousands of people, you're going to get those comments all the time. But they were very good in shutting down the rumor mill as much as possible and keeping it online with what we knew at the time. You were allowed to speculate, you were allowed to have a theory, but you were not allowed to create your own facts. Now, on the Reporter Room YouTube channel. She is another wonderful hostess, and keeps things in line. I didn't see very too much argumentative posts going on there. Nobody really out on the wild on their own. Most of it was complimenting Jessica and her work, and as she should have been, because she was very good. And her videos were very good, and her research was good. So I have no problem with either page. Someone referred me to a person of interest on one of these pages. I believe it started on the Facebook page, and it may have crossed over into the YouTube channel, which are two completely unrelated entities, except for the subject matter, which was the Idaho quadruple murders. And the message I received was, have you heard of this guy, Pappa Rodger? That's Pappa, and Rodger is Rodger. And the profile picture was an actual profile of a man with looked like a 1940s Marine, what we used to call a sea cap. One of those, the straight line caps with the insignia on the side. And it was kind of, color pattern, and a picture looked old, but that could easily be done. Pappa Rodger had a habit of being argumentative with some people. He would state something as fact. People would question him, and he would get angry, get snippy, he would either move on to something else, or he had a habit in his postings to ask questions and then answer them himself and act as if it was fact before it was known to be fact. Well, I got this message about this Pappa Rodger. Have you seen him? Because many people were following my comments after my theoretical posting that I made. So they asked me for my feedback on this Pappa Rodger. And I saw what he was doing, and I'd been in that position before where you feel somewhat attacked and you have to defend yourself. So I kind of felt, some camaraderie, some, some understanding there. And so I didn't want to blow him off. I wanted to engage with him, and, because I had my theories, he had his. They weren't that different, but it was the way he presented certain information. And so we talked online to each other. Just a few exchanges, nothing dramatic, and so forth. And he did that with a lot of people, but at least with me, I didn't find it to be, I didn't find him nearly as defensive, because I was listening. And that's all a lot of these people really want, is an audience. Someone to listen, someone to give them value, which is what I did. Now it comes out, as of yesterday, that Pappa Rodger may have been the killer, BK. And it makes a lot of sense. a lot of people assumed that or called him that during their arguments online. And that's kind of one, it's like being called a racist or something. You just shut him down by saying, oh, you're probably the murderer or something like that. But in his case, for example, he asked people what they thought of was the timeline and how long they thought the suspect stayed in the residence. And a couple of people responded and such. And one person responded and said, well, what do you think? Turning it back on him. And he says, well, I think it was about 15 to 16 minutes. And that's what the police are now speculating. It was 15 or 16 minutes. Saying 15 minutes is probably what a lot of people would say. And this person said it. So it doesn't make it, a slam dunk that he is the person. The profile picture of Pappa Rodger does resemble very much the suspect. It's not an exact look. I think there could have been some changes, some editing in the Pappa Rodger profile pic. And there were other postings regarding, for instance, someone asked, and this has been a question in the entire murder investigation, why they think it's a targeted killing. Also, why they think the knife used was a K-bar knife. Now, if you know anything about forensics, you know that tool marks, or in this case stab wounds, often can tell you what the weapon is. And you learn this. And you learn this in the academy, you learn it on the streets from firsthand, and you learn it in advanced education courses in forensics. So it was not real difficult to determine the type of knife. So one person speculates, well, it was probably, determined to be that kind of knife in the, autopsy, which it was. But they also had another piece of evidence, which no one knew at that point. Yet Pappa Rodger indicated they probably have the sheath, the knife sheath. Now, that's a pretty huge assumption from someone, out there in online world in this group, coming up with they probably have the sheath. And why would you think that? I mean, that's like saying, he probably left a calling card or something along those lines, and that turning out to be true. Well, in this case, it was true. And presumably, the sheath was left on Maggie's, Mogan's bed. Now, what's the significance of that? And she and Kaylee were together in the bed, but it apparently was more on her side or something like that. So what's the significance? Well, when you enter a crime scene, you're about to commit murder, you take the knife out at the first kill, and you commit the act. Now, obviously, either he left it on purpose or he got distracted, and, this is a highly intense scene, you can imagine, and it completely slipped his mind. So, that's why the police believe it was targeted to one of the two girls there and said so. I think it's a real jump to say, because the sheath was found on the bed, that this was a targeted killing. he could easily have been, breaking in and then, or gone in with the intention of killing and just killed the first person he came across. So this is, it's all very interesting information. But more importantly is the fact that this person in this day and age may have been, we don't know yet, and I'm going to guess that it was him. Because again, in this day and age, social media is part of everyday life. Work life, private life, personal, you name it, it's part of life. Kids as young as 6 years old are on social media. And to think that a serial killer or a criminal, or in this case, just I think of a serial killer in the making, and yet to be determined to be a serial killer, would use social media because they are part of the world. They are part of today's world. Had social media and computers and the internet been around back when Ted Bundy was active, I can guarantee you he would have had numerous pages, Facebook pages, and would have been very, very active on social media. It appeals to one's narcissism. We all have narcissistic traits, and some take it to extreme levels and so forth. So social media really, the reason why it's so successful, things like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and such, is we all want to feel important. We all want to promote ourselves. That's why we post pictures and etc. So it's not beyond the realm of probability that Pappa Rodger is or was, in fact, BK. There are a lot of other things that point to this. His emergence as Pappa Rodger profile, not only his comments and his responses on posts, but also when his posting stopped, correlated with his arrest, etc. So that was one very interesting thing that came up this week. Anyway, that concludes episode 32 of Monday Morning Detective. And be advised, we will be, I do have a couple of interviews lined up with some very interesting investigators. And so stay tuned. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day. Bye now.